Welcome to 30 What Now? This is Mel.
And this is Iryan.
And we're two millennials in our 30s who are faking it through life.
On this podcast, we'll explore what it means to be a 30-year-old and try to make sense of it all along the way.
We're also new to this whole podcast thing, so if you're keen to see our journey, listen away.
Shall we?
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to 30 What Now?
At the end of the last episode, we took a bit of a break. We rounded it out to say we'll pick up friendships in another episode, being this. But before we get into that, I was having a think before the episode, before we started recording. Mel, what are you watching this week?
What I have been watching? Well, I just finished watching Ugly Betty. And it's so good. There's 4 seasons. I think it actually ended in 2010.
Are there only 4 seasons?
It's only 4 seasons.
I could have sworn there were more.
It's 4 seasons, but every season is 20 episodes. Jesus. So it's 80 episodes. I've actually blitzed through it in the past, 2 months.
Is Ugly Betty America
Ferrera? Yes, the one and only, the one who's been in the Barbie movie. I feel like this is my second reference.
The Barbie movie?
You haven't watched it?
I still haven't watched it. I'm waiting for it to pop up on Disney or Amazon or Netflix or something.
Yeah, fine. So you haven't watched it?
No.
Get on board. I'm pretty sure we spoke about Greta Gerwig and the Barbie movie already, right?
Yes.
But it's America Ferrera, and it's really interesting, right? I think when you watch any TV shows from the past, there's always going to be an element of, ooh, can they do that? Can they say that?
Yep.
Right? Because in the movie, her family's from Mexico. There's a lot of references to Mexican food, Mexican things when it comes to her colleagues insulting her. And actually, as a quicker background, Ugly Betty is about this woman who is not your typical beauty, not your typical fashionista, who entered into the world of fashion magazines. So you actually get a chance to see how she navigated through the shocks of the magazine world and how she was able to potentially, if you haven't watched it, come up on top without actually losing her integrity or values. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. What have you been watching?
Something less relevant to the podcast is what I've been watching. This week, The Continental came out on Amazon Prime Video.
What's The Continental?
Have you ever watched John Wick?
Like the Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, the Keanu Reeves movie.
No.
No, but I heard about it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We're probably on the 4th John Wick movie now.
Yeah.
I think it's a good movie, but this is the backstory to a hotel in the show called The Continental.
Right, okay.
Full action-based, right? It's a 3-part series, 1.5 hours each.
Yeah.
I think it was. And it just finished yesterday. So I actually watched the last episode this morning before we started recording. And
That's why you sounded so lazy.
I was watching the telly to round out what I was watching this week.
Fair enough.
Which on the previous episode, we talked about building relationships. But one of the things I was mentioning to Mel earlier, the question I like to ask is, what are you watching this week? It's interesting because you start to get a feel of what people like outside of work.
Yeah.
The Continental being a bit more action-y.
Yeah, a bit more suspense.
Yeah, but if you ask me this again on the next episode or in the next couple of weeks, it'll probably be something different. Really, whatever just pops up. Like you said, you're watching Ugly Betty now because it's on Disney Plus now.
It's on Disney Plus now. Also, I love dramas. I love telenovelas. I love soap dramas. Soap operas? Dramas. Soap operas? Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah. And actually, even just thinking about it now, I think Ugly Betty actually probably, based on what we were discussing in the last episode, a lot of the topics that we talked about kind of resonated in Ugly Betty as well, which is why when you asked what I was watching, it was something that I wanted to bring up. I actually watch a lot of TV shows at various different points. I'm also watching like Only Murders in the Building, Sex Education, all that, like everything, right?
That was a good one.
That was a good one. I know, but we can talk
was a
about that
good
next
one.
time.
That was about a podcast.
Yes, yes, but we can talk about that next time, right? But
Yes, but yeah, no, Ugly Betty is an interesting one. So I actually, and I know we have a topic at hand, but I'm curious to know. Ugly Betty came out 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago, and we were 10 years younger. Did you watch it at all at the time? Did you know what it was? Did you know?
I've watched a couple episodes, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't remember anything.
Yeah, and so it didn't. It sounds like it didn't resonate with you 10 years ago, but it does now.
Yeah, I think it might have come out. I might have watched it maybe when I either just moved from Malaysia to here or when I was still in Malaysia, right? So the concept of racism, the concept of needing to struggle to find a footing in your workplace, the concept of relationships with your colleagues, and at the start of Ugly Betty, it's a bit fraught, right? The concept of how you like the relationship between Ugly Betty and her dad and her sister and her nephew, all quite far, like foreign to me. It's too far ahead. Nothing about it, honestly, nothing about it resonated, apart from the fact I was like, wow, it's so pretty, it's a fashion magazine, like that's probably the extent. But now that I've had a chance to watch it, there was some really interesting thoughts, right? Like even just jumping really briefly into the different relationship that Ugly Betty might have had with everyone on screen. She had this really like love-hate relationship with some of her colleagues who was trying to, outsmart her and get that editor role that she wanted to get to. Like at the end, it was a nice conclusion, but probably a big chunk of time, I really hated the coworker and colleague. And I wonder, at the time, I did wonder whether that sort of love-hate competitive environment will always might exist in your workplace. I don't know if you...
Healthy competition.
Healthy.
Again, I never watched the show.
Never yet, but it was at the time there was a lot of sabotage. And it only got better when they were willing to help each other, but also, in line with what you said the last time, was able to be more vulnerable with maybe some of the struggles that they were going through. So in that instance, there was this one particular colleague that was probably more closed off. So his ability to open up might have helped with that relationship. Oh, actually, not just him, those couple. Like the colleague's ability to open up might have helped.
Did Ugly Betty make friends in the show?
She did in the end, but it was a long journey. It was long, and she was able to make some friends, but those friends that she made at the very beginning were more open, were more willing to give her a part of themselves.
Which, well, actually, you touched on a point that I brought up in the previous episode about, how to build relationships in the workplace, but then also with friends, being a bit open about yourself. So speaking of friends, I'm curious now. When we say friendship is a very general word. What is a friend to you? So that was a loaded question.
I know. For some reason, I was trying to think of a Disney song, and all I had was Bare Necessities from the Jungle Book. But
I'm thinking more Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, true, but simple. Basically the same song. Let's be honest.
It is not the same song. I am offended.
You don't think Bare Necessities is a good song?
I resonate so much with Pumbaa. Not so much with Mowgli.
But no, the person who sang the song isn't Mowgli. It's the bear.
Oh yeah, it is the bear.
It is the bear.
Yeah, gosh, I haven't seen it
basically
for a
the
while.
same. Anyway, so I think you have different categories of friends in your life, right? So you have the childhood friend. You might have the fair weather friend. I'm not saying it in priorities at the moment. You might have friends who you don't see at all, but then once you actually see them, you're like, damn, everything is the same. I think you would also have friends in similar life category, right? So you might have, perhaps the reason why you're friends at the moment is because you've gone through like similar things at the same time. So like it happenstance you guys became friends, but it's so good enough. Like, and you guys actually, like, you're able to still rely on them for
So
things.
birds of a feather.
Maybe birds of a feather type situation, maybe. Maybe that's the 4 categories that I'm thinking of now, but I'm sure there's more out there. So I don't think there's a set definition for it.
No, exactly. Yeah, there's no set definition of what a friend is, and friendship, I suppose, to me, and we were chatting about this just earlier, friendship and the way that we approach it has changed.
Yeah.
From our teenage years to our 20s to our 30s and looking forward to the 40s, 50s, 60s, right? I think friendships are probably one of the most important things that you can have. We talked about community, etc., and friendships probably at the top of my list for myself. But yeah, different types of friendships, and in my 20s, I would have viewed friendships as more distant from myself, more arm's length.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then as I approach late 20s, early 30s, living away from home, your friends become your family.
You know what? That is actually bizarre because I feel like it's the opposite for me. I don't think we've ever spoken about this, so there might be a slight confusion in your face, maybe.
A bit.
A little bit, right? Like, if you can't see a video, he's confused. But I think, because as you're mentioning how a concept of friendship has changed, I think mine has changed to the to a, like, when I was younger, I actually categorize some of my friends as my best friend, to the point where I actually have a
Did you have a list?
I have a list of
Mel
who
had a
was
list.
my best, as in, like, who was my best friend, to like who is, like, I think at the time 7th on my list of best friends.
Such a lawyer.
No, but it was also in the construct of, if I were to get married, who's my maid of honor and who are my bridesmaids, right? And I think I've always had a best friend for the longest time, potentially until really recently, when I actually found that friends of mine who I might not place like the most importance on, in the sense of, they are like my closest friend, blah blah blah, like, I'm like, they are a friend, and as we will mention, like, situations just happen to bring us all together, but we were willing to make time every so often to meet up with each other to talk about our life circumstance. Like, they have been the one that's kind of been somewhat there for me quite a fair bit, like, and it's really funny, like, to the point where when I was in a play and I've invited them to come watch the play and they didn't come, and I have no qualms about it, like, not angry at all. Whereas when I was younger, if my close friends didn't want to come, I would be fuming. So, like, kind of opposite to you, mine kind of went from like my bitches to, as long as, like, they have my best interests at heart, that they're when I need it, there is no expectation of them to always be there around me.
I mean, you touched on two points I think are quite interesting. We might want to talk about. One of them was making time for you. So I view all of this as having an adult friendship relationship.
Yeah.
Right? We're all busy. Right? We get it. Now, 10 years ago, less so. 20 years ago, less so. Right?
Yeah.
If you don't make time for me, kind of you're taken. What's the word? You're offended by it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now we're all busy. I get it. You need to. The phone works both ways. Right? You need to put in the effort. Right? So making time. I find it. I wouldn't say I find it challenging to make time for friends. I think that's.
Are you sure?
I mean, it's not I mean, there are times I don't pick up Mel's call. But
That was what I was trying to get. I'm glad he picked it up.
but you gotta make time, but it shouldn't feel like a burden.
And I think probably when I was younger, it felt more like a burden. Whereas now, maybe because it's the concept of like an adult relationship, I like if a friend had to cancel because she needed more time to herself, I won't be as mad. Maybe I was just a petty little girl back in the day, right? But I also do think that maybe because of how we looked at our friends differently from when we were younger, that's probably why our views of friendship is very different now. Like maybe because like you actually put them more of an arm's length, and now that you've had a chance to see like what you maybe you were lacking at the time, do you reckon that maybe have changed how you saw them now? You were doing
Well, I think it's a bit about understanding your values, and we'll talk a lot about that on this podcast, as you may now already know. But it's about knowing what's important to you, but also if you know yourself and you're confident in yourself. We are going down this mentorship route, aren't we? But you know, if you know you, and you're comfortable with yourself, you're less. You take less things to heart.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it. Which, so that there was this other point that you made as you were
Rambling on.
I didn't want to be rude. As you were rambling on, there's this point that you made about friends that you don't see often.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
when I hear that, I think about friends that are overseas.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I've been very happy to say that, you know, there's friends all over the world. Right? But how do you keep in touch? Okay, how do you keep in touch, and or how do you get to a point in the relationship where if you don't pick up the phone for 6 months, but then when you do, it feels like no time has passed?
I don't know if I know the answer to that either. Similar to you, I have friends who moved. My best friends actually moved overseas. / my best friends at the time were based in Malaysia and came here, and so, you know, I moved away. I think, you know, what I've found, right, is that throughout the years I've experimented with, in a way, checking in with them every once in a while. And I found that those who have fallen off, you know, naturally fallen away, like you've just stopped talking to each other, that's kind of how I've managed to figure out who I've been able to keep close contact with. So it's kind of not a conscious effort. It's kind of like a happenstance. Whoever decided to also like reciprocate. I think you'll find that, I don't know, depending on your personality. Like for me, I guess I'm more of the potentially like anxious sort of personality. I tend to gravitate towards people who are willing to reciprocate effort, time, and sort of like mental capacity to be in that friendship, right? So yeah, to me, it's more so whenever you check in, they actually give the same sort of energy back.
Yeah, and you know, as I said earlier, the phone works both ways. What is your, as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, this came to mind, what is your love language in a friendship? And you know what it is for me recently? Sending memes. I send a lot of memes.
I feel like is that very millennial? I feel like that must be
I
millennial.
think that's very millennial.
Yeah.
I think that's a very millennial thing.
Yeah, because also, quick segue, memes are now also used at work quite often.
Oh, yes.
Which I think,
Teams allows you to create a meme.
Yeah.
As a sticker.
So, millennial things.
It's such a millennial thing.
So how often do you send memes to all your friends overseas?
Every day.
Every day?
It really depends who and it really depends what.
Oh my god. I feel like we have such different ways of maintaining our friendships. So I don't send memes. I react to Insta stories.
Are you not a millennial?
I am. I react to Insta stories. And so if you don't have Insta story, as my overseas
Which
friends,
I don't.
you
that
don't,
often.
right? I would not have an idea what's happening. So when I
So what I'm hearing is, Mel, you will forget about me.
Assuming that we don't do this podcast together, maybe, probably. But also, if I were to visit you at any point, are you willing to put in the effort in that meeting, right? I don't know, you don't have to say the answer now. Like, I already know it deep down in my heart. But
I will always make time for you, Mel.
but also I have no, like, I'm not putting any obligation. Just because as an adult, I've realized you just you can't expect everything from your friends.
So you can't expect anything. Is probably where we're going with this. This is how I view it, right? Again, adult relationship. Don't take things to heart too easily. I mean, if it's important enough, you will. But at the same time, we need to appreciate that we all have lives.
Yeah, especially for those, like, I don't know how many of your friends have kids. That would be even harder.
Yeah.
Right? And in a way, you have to bond with their kids to bond with them.
Yeah. Well, not always, but it would be nice.
Yes, exactly.
It would be nice.
It makes me think, have you had any friendship breakups?
No.
Oh!
Well,
How?
at least nothing. At least nothing dramatic enough for me to
Want to
have
break
it
up.
have triggered in my mind when you mentioned it. I don't think.
Okay, wait,
Have,
so-
no. Have you?
Yeah. I was about to say, do you even... Okay, firstly, I'll say, like, I've had dramatic breakups.
Okay.
To the point where... So I've probably have two in my mind, right? One is probably a bit more of a childish breakup where, like, maybe for a while I thought that our values aren't aligned. Whether like, when I was younger, this was, like, a couple years ago, 10 years ago, where I thought maybe, for a while, whether I was being made fun at, rather made fun with, and there's a couple other instances, right? And that made me kind of drop out of a friendship group at the time. In hindsight, I still don't know, because it's so long ago, and I still don't know whether I was being dramatic or whether, like, my guts was being correct. But, to a certain extent, you trust your gut whether you've made the right decision, right? So it might have been correct for me at the time, but that was a long time ago. I was more dramatic. People were more dramatic. That's as a kid. My more recent, like, friendship breakup was probably more, like, heart wrenching for me. If I'm honest, like, it was a really, really close friend, and the only reason why we broke up was a value misalignment. And I think that was hardest, when you kind of have this, like, I think maybe this is why I am so chill about friendship, because I had such a strong relationship with this person, and all of a sudden now, because of a very big difference in how we do things, they're no longer in my life. And this is probably my last, like, best friend. All my other best friends were, like, moved overseas. So I've lost all of my, like, closest friends that I thought would actually follow me through life. And now I'm left with, like, really good friends that I might not have placed an importance in. But now I find that they actually play a bigger part in my life. So, anyway, so those are my two massive friendship breakups. And I can't believe you haven't had any.
Well, I'm pretty chill.
Like, did you ever have, like, friends... Is that a guy thing? Like, nothing...
You know what? It could be, but maybe it's a part of growing up, right? You take it with a bit of maturity. People grow up, people grow apart, and it's just natural.
But that's not a breakup.
Exactly.
But I surely, like...
I feel like I've broken Mel.
Yes, because I know other male friends. Okay, I'm thinking of one person that might have had a big friendship breakup, and that's also on value misalignment, right? But actually, now to think about it, probably all friendship breakups are based on value misalignment.
Right.
Yes.
And it takes us back to the point of, do you understand your
Values?
And, when you're in your teenage years, your 20s, you might still be figuring out what that is. And even in your 30s, you're probably still figuring out what that is, and it's going to change over time. But when that starts to settle a little bit, you start to think about where you want to put your energy, because we're all busy. There's only so many things we can do in a day of the 16 waking hours that we've got. assuming you sleep 8 hours, right? You get 16 waking hours. A lot of that's going to go to work. You've got a family, kids, hobbies, health, cooking, etc.
Yeah.
You're not left with much.
Yeah. Unless you find your friends at work, at your community,
Unless
your family.
Yes.
All that, right?
Listen to the previous episode.
That was my way of being like, don't forget, there's another one, another part to this. But yeah, so I think like, I hope going forward, I wonder if I would have any other friendship breakups. And actually, no, I don't think I will. Because I'm pretty sure I know other grown-ups, like those in their 50s, 60s. I won't name who.
How we call them grown-ups.
So, well, I have to feel young somehow. But like, for example, I know my mom who might have had like a less dramatic friendship breakup as well. Like someone who ghosted her. And like, it's probably akin to a breakup, right? It's not as dramatic. It's probably more adult, but it will happen still. And which brings me to this question: has any of your friends ghosted you?
Not that I can remember, but again, these things I don't dwell on.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why when you ask me, nothing triggers in my mind. I could probably sit down for a couple of minutes and think about it and really try and find one. But even then,
make me feel better about
I
myself.
think so. Yeah,
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so. So you got a friend in me that we can talk. No,
Yeah.
not that I can think of. No, I'm sure it's happened in the past, but this is, and I forget which episode we might have talked about this on, so I can't point you in that direction. But it's about as you get older, you try not look back but look forward. Things have happened. Yes, you can't change that.
Yeah.
And so because I try and leave it in the past, it doesn't really trigger.
Yeah. I'm trying to think whether I should tell you an idiom in Mandarin that my dad always says, but I'm not quite sure.
Go ahead.
So
I won't understand it, but if you interpret it for
I'll
me.
explain it, right? So whenever my dad talks about needing to look forward, not look backwards, he would say, 看前不看后. Wait, 看前 and 看后, right? 和看后, right? But the direct translation is literally look forward, but not backwards. So it's actually 看前不看后. But then he would make a joke, unless it's to do with money, because then 钱 could also sound like money, and 后 means like the thickness of money. So it's like look forward, not backwards, unless it's to do with money. Then you look at the thickness of the money. Something like that. I feel like I butchered it somewhat. I haven't heard him say it in a while. So that joke came to my
Well,
head.
if ever I meet your dad, uncle, I want to hear it from you.
I actually have another like sort of quick question when it comes to like friends with the same values. Did you ever find that you befriend friends that might have had qualities that you don't have?
That's actually a good question. You know, a lot of people say surround yourselves with people that are better than you, which, yes, I agree. I think you want to be in a circle that makes you feel comfortable, but you want to be in a circle that challenges you. And it could be things that you don't have. It could be things that you aspire to have, or things that you want to get
Better at?
You want to get better at.
Yep.
So good question, and I think that's true, because especially myself, with the amount of time that us in our 30s or so spend a lot of time with our friends, you absorb from each other.
Yeah. The only reason why I'm asking is like, how I mentioned all my friends have moved away / the ones I've broken up with. Well, what I've actually analyzed, and I've spoken to my brother about this as well, is that all of them have very similar qualities. All of them are loud, don't give a freak of how other people think, very outspoken, very intelligent, and a lot of the friends that I was super close with up to now, I've made when I just came from overseas, and I was a bit quieter. And sometimes it makes me think, right? The fact that they are no longer in my life now, when I'm probably I've achieved, not achieved, but I've been able to like get a little bit of their attributes now. Sometimes I wonder whether I'm a shit person for no longer being friends with them anymore. Like, is it because I've gotten what I needed? That's it. I don't need them in my life anymore. And so like the next sort of like friends I'm now closer with, I'm conscious to not find friends that might be as like big personality. Only because in my head I'm like, oh,
You're the loud one?
not that I'm the loud one, but like if I'm no longer that close to these relevant friends, is it because we don't match, we don't gel as well?
Is that you closing yourself off in a friendship relationship?
I think it's me being wary of whether I have been finding the right friends with the right values, right? And so like even when I was looking at your friends, I don't think I see a similar sort of characteristic in like the people that you're currently close with. I find them probably like a little bit more not similar, but not as different, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I kind of get that, but you were saying earlier, there's a group of people that are loud and they congregate together. I get as well, as we started off the episode, birds of a feather flock together in a way, but doesn't that feel a bit stale?
That you guys, no, but it's not really like.
Where is the variety in mindset, in thinking? When do you feel challenged? If everybody thinks the same.
But I think that might have been the thing. I think I've been challenged by my friends throughout my 20s. Maybe that's why. Like now, I felt like I was so challenged to the point that I was exhausted by a lot of the friends then. Whereas here, I think there are some challenges, but because we're adults now, maybe we actually talk about it a little better. There's a little bit more empathy when it comes to maybe differentiating viewpoints. Maybe that's just how I saw mine.
Well, what I would like for us to do, depending on how many episodes this goes on for and whether we continue to talk about being 30 or into our 40s, is how friendships change between now and then. And so we talked a bit on this episode about values and not taking things to heart. What I would like to know is if our listeners have anything else to add.
I think it'll be also interesting to see, right? Like, depending on which part of your life is right now, or even like what you've observed from your parents, how you anticipate friendship is, like how will we be dealing with our friends in the next couple of years? Hot tips on how to have less dramatic friendship breakups, so that might just be a me request.
Well, if you have any comments or any thoughts, DM us on Instagram at 30whatnow, or any of your stories.
Yeah, actually,
we're very keen to hear.
Yeah, let us know your best, friendship breakup stories, or like your best stories on maintaining great friendships, whether it be overseas or interstate or here.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Well, we might leave it there. Thank you very much for listening today on 30 What Now. Don't forget to rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're always keen to know more from our listeners what you think. And until next time.
Bye!